I'm sure most people in the anime scene have seen at least one person go, One Piece gets good around chapter 400. And I'm here today to say that, well, it's true. Chapter 400 was a banger chapter. It was the beginning of the Straw Hats versus CP9, but that's not the point. The point of today's video is to talk about when One Piece actually got good. And no, Naruto fans, the answer is not never. The first few arcs of One Piece leaves a little bit to be desired. It doesn't have the automatic hook of other animes like Attack on Titan or Promised Neverland, but it does have a few good moments. For example, the iconic Luffy and Shanks backstory and seeing how Zoro and Luffy team up is so nostalgic. But that's also part of the problem. To someone who doesn't know anything about One Piece, the first few arcs pale in comparison compared to other more recent animes. And being quite honest, some of the beginning arcs are just straight up boring. While Orange Town had this cool premise of Luffy being in a cage, having to fight our first ever antagonist Delfruit user, at one point it was extremely stretched with Unicycle Bro and whatever this guy was taking up most of the arc. Then we head over to Syrup Village, which was just boring. Kuro had like the worst plan I've ever seen, as well as the worst posture ever. Like, why do you look like the average League of Legends player? But my point is, One Piece's first few arcs were a bit slow, and without the nostalgia factor, they were pretty boring and tiring to get through. God, this is the most non-One Piece fan thing I've ever said. I'm so sorry. Anyways, now let's go back to simping over Oda. After Syrup Village, something happened to Oda because One Piece went from a mid-show to absolute peak fiction. Baratie and Arlong Park are still some of the best arcs, and they do have what I'd argue is 2 of the top 10 moments in the entirety of the show. The Baratie was one of the most unique arc plots I've ever seen, and it did so many things so well. Firstly, that idea that in a world full of pirates, monsters, and Australia without the steroids, the biggest challenge Luffy would face is working a minimum wage job is just funny. Shout out to all you waiters and waitresses, by the way, thank you. Another thing that it did well was set up Sanji's character. Sanji's character from the very beginning was fleshed out, and we could immediately see what type of character he was. Horny. But nice. But mostly horny. While Luffy was trying his best, we also got to see how the crew got to relax for a bit, and they have a chill time, and oh, starving pirates. Ah shit, of course he fed them. Shit! While Don Krieg was a pretty mid-villain, we did get to see excellent character building by Oda through Sanji's flashback. It's unfortunate the character building wasn't for Don Krieg. Why did I phrase the sentence like this? While at first Sanji's decision to feed the pirates made no sense, we immediately saw the reason why he did it, and all of it clicked. It was top-tier character building from the very start. Speaking of top-tier, let's talk about Mihawk, a top-tier swordsman. Mihawk vs Zoro is what truly made this arc in particular so special. Whilst before it, even though Sanji's character building was top-tier, there was nothing other than that. The plot was unique, but the villain was, well, he was bad, like, really bad. Especially his, I was gonna put a joke there, but Krieg is just really bad at everything. Like, I don't know what to say. Zoro vs Mihawk is one of the best moments in all of One Piece, and it definitely symbolized One Piece getting so much better. Mihawk did a lot of things at once. Not only did he give us an extremely epic fight scene, but he also set up Zoro's character and gave Zoro a lot more depth. Before, Zoro was just an emo swordsman. Now he was a person with loyalty, honor, and, well, still an emo swordsman. He's still emo. The line scars on a back or a swordsman's shame is so hype for no reason. Seeing Zoro willing to give his entire life for honor is just so incredibly amazing for, as I said, no reason. Like, he's just T-posing, but he does it so cool. And then following all that is the iconic promise, the one that made all of us feel so many things, especially Zoro, who was feeling a lot of pain. Mihawk was the first real threat the crew had faced, and he showed that there would be so many more struggles along the way in their journey to be as strong as him, which is just so hype. Seeing just how much the crew would have to grow to get through their dreams set up One Piece to be so much more, and to have so much better villains than, well, this guy. Or this guy. The fact is, Mihawk was the first good antagonist the crew had faced, and he delivered perfectly. Mihawk vs Zoro was in every way a perfect fight, even though it was a fight, similar to how Gon vs Pito or Luffy vs Sharlos was a fight. It wasn't. Side note, but just the fact that all of this happened whilst Mihawk used a knife I would use to cut onions is just, Oda, how good are you? And then, of course, following all this was Arlong Park. While a lot of the Baratie was focused on hype moments and whatever this was, Arlong Park was an arc almost purely focused on emotions. Nami's betrayal at first made us feel confused. Why had she ditched us for Arlong? Like, if she was leaving us for Mihawk, I would have been like, nice, I'm proud of you. But Arlong? This? She left us for this? However, as the plot continues and we get to see how her backstory plays out and how her life was hell, we feel so many emotions at once. We see how much she struggled, making us sad. Once we see how her money was stolen by the rat guy, we feel a sense of hopelessness for her. Nami's hopelessness, desperation, and anguish are all felt through the readers, and all of it climaxed during this scene, when she stabs herself at her shoulder and screams at Arlong. The next moment is the very moment One Piece became God tier. And that, of course, is the introduction of Nami's sister Nojiko, who's the best waifu. When Nami turns around and asks Luffy for help, not only was it the first time she's ever asked for help, but it symbolizes so much. At this point, One Piece made all of us cry, watching Luffy put his treasure, his favorite thing ever, on her head and telling her of course he will. All of it is just such good storytelling. The fact that Oda could not only write such amazing fight scenes, but also make one of the most emotional and powerful scenes I've seen from all of anime is just breathtaking. Following an even more emotional fight where Oda managed to symbolize years of suffering with the Room, I think everyone realized just how good One Piece is. Following Arlong Park and the Baratie, a lot of things became clear. For one, we realized that Oda could write insane antagonists as well as fight scenes and make you feel things. Fun fact, the fight scene also made Zoro feel things. Pain. He felt pain. I'm sorry, I'll stop reusing my jokes. After all this, we also got to see Oda write one of the most powerful scenes ever. Not only did he masterfully set up such an emotional backstory, but he managed to deliver on the climax of it all. And while I skipped over the Luffy vs Arlong fight, the walk with the crew was also one of the most hypest moments in the entire show. And on top of all of this, the fights weren't that bad. Even Usopp's fight was good. In just 2 arcs, Oda managed to show us how he can not only write god-tier fight scenes, but also god-tier emotional scenes and some of the best character writing I've ever seen. Have I made up for it at the beginning with my Oda simping? Is this like averaged out? Does this average out? So yes, did One Piece continue getting better as it goes on? Of course it did. One Piece is constantly improving as Oda figures out what works and what doesn't. And as it goes on, I'm sure it's only going to continue to get better. But it was always top notch. Baratie and Arlong Park are some of the best arcs he's ever written to date. So to all the new readers, don't give up. In multiple ways. While the first few arcs may be mid, everything else is peak. For the most part. Everything else is peak. For the most part. Fuck you, Foxley. So to anyone still wondering, when does One Piece get good? The answer is chapter 953 when we get to see Zoro's boobs in all their glory. Overall though, that's it for me. Thank you for watching.